In the early blush of dawn, as soft light danced upon dew-laden lawns in a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unexpected visitor appeared at a secluded garden gate. A gaunt, determined dog mother with a patchwork coat of faded russet and silver, her eyes alight with a mix of desperation and hope, led 3 fragile cubs across the threshold of a stranger's yard. Their tiny paws made hesitant impressions in the soft earth, and the silent scene spoke of a desperate plea for sanctuary, a moment on the cusp of an incredible transformation where compassion and survival would intertwine in ways no one could have foreseen. Chilly morning embraced the suburban enclave of Belladonna Heights, a place where manicured hedges and quiet streets usually concealed the extraordinary behind everyday life. It began when, just as the first rays of sunrise painted the sky in gentle pastels, a stray dog with a time-worn coat and tired eyes appeared at the boundary of a secluded yard. With her were 3 diminutive cubs whose fragile steps betrayed both hunger and tentative hope. The dog, later known as Marcellina, carried herself with quiet dignity, despite the hardships etched into her frame. Her once lustrous fur had lost its luster, and the ribs that peered through her skin told the tale of many lean days. Yet in her eyes shone a stubborn spark, a determination to protect her cubs at all costs. The 3 young ones, soon named Isadora, Lucienne, and Serafina for the delicate promise they carried, moved with a timidity that suggested they had never known safety. In a yard framed by an aged wooden fence and blooming night jasmine, an act of kindness was about to set off. A cascade of change, a bowl of water, and a modest scattering of nourishing food were quietly laid out on the sunlit patio, inviting the wary family to trust the gentle call of compassion. Marcellina paused at the edge of the yard, her body tense with uncertainty. The cubs, their eyes glistening with a mix of curiosity and fear, inched forward. In that delicate moment, every heartbeat and every breath spoke a silent plea, a plea for mercy and the promise of a new beginning. From that instant, the quiet, suburban world became the stage for a remarkable tale of survival and hope. Without a word spoken by any human observer, the drama of life unfolded as Marcellina advanced, step by cautious step, drawn by the scent of care. The 3 cubs gathered around her, their small forms trembling yet eager for the sustenance that might bring relief to their starving bellies. The garden itself seemed to hold its breath. The gentle rustle of leaves and the soft coo of waking birds provided an understated symphony, underscoring the gravity of the scene. No dramatic overtures were needed, only the pure, unadulterated language of survival and kindness was heard. The encounter, although silent, spoke volumes about the raw interdependence of life. As days passed, the garden transformed into a haven where nature and nurture intertwined. In the gentle light of early mornings and under the caress of quiet afternoons, Marcellina's family began to display subtle signs of recovery. Isadora, the first of the cubs, revealed a spark of playful energy despite her fragile condition. Lucien's inquisitive eyes searched the world with a quiet wonder, and Serafina, the smallest and most reserved, found comfort in the protective presence of her mother. Word of the mysterious canine family spread quietly among the residents of Belladonna Heights. Neighbors who had once merely exchanged polite nods began to discuss the strange yet heartwarming scene with a sense of shared curiosity. Among them was Alessandro Verani, a well-dressed man whose refined manner masked a deep-seated skepticism toward any disruption of the usual order. Standing by his own immaculate garden, he observed the gathering with a mix of disapproval and reluctant admiration. In whispered conversations with fellow residents, his questions echoed. How could such vulnerability be allowed in a world so governed by routine and order? Yet even he could not ignore the silent testimony of nature's resilience. As the days turned into weeks, a quiet community of compassion began to coalesce around the makeshift sanctuary. Neighbors contributed in small but meaningful ways, some leaving extra food on doorsteps, others offering warm blankets and gentle words of encouragement. An elderly herbalist by the name of Fiorella Mancini arrived with remedies drawn from age-old traditions, sharing tinctures made from rosemary, chamomile, and lavender that seemed to infuse a spark of healing into the frail bodies of the cubs. In the soft glow of twilight, as the scent of these herbs mingled with the cool evening air, the community found itself united by an unexpected mission: to nurture the vulnerable and to prove that even in a world that often forgets the value of tenderness, compassion could indeed prevail. In a modest corner of the yard, a sheltered space was transformed into a refuge, the Refuge of Hope, as it came to be known among those who believed in the sanctuary's promise. Constructed from salvaged wood, adorned with soft blankets and scattered toys, the refuge became a symbol of hope. It was here that stray animals and lost souls alike found a temporary haven, a place where the harshness of the outside world was held at bay by the collective will to protect and heal. With each passing day, the fragile family grew stronger. Marcellina, though still bearing the marks of past struggles, began to exhibit a newfound resolve. Her cautious approach gave way to a steadier gait, and her eyes, once filled with wary mistrust, gradually softened into a gaze of quiet determination. The cubs, too, blossomed under the tender care provided by both nature and nurturing hands. Their playful antics in the sunlit garden provided moments of levity and joy, their small barks and whimpers a rhythmic counterpoint to the ongoing narrative of survival. Yet, the sanctuary's success was not without its challenges. As the community's support grew, so did the attention of those who saw the fragile balance as a threat to established order. Among them emerged Inspector Ronaldo Giusti, a stern, imposing figure with a reputation for strict adherence to municipal regulations. His arrival on a crisp morning, marked by a furrowed brow and a clipboard in hand, signaled the first major confrontation between the ideals of compassion and the rigid structures of bureaucracy. Inspector Giusti's arrival was not accompanied by dramatic fanfare, yet his presence was felt in every cautious glance and whispered conversation among the residents. Standing at the gate of the sanctuary, his measured voice broke the morning silence. This assembly of stray animals on private property poses health and safety concerns. Regulations must be observed. His words, though formal and unyielding, were met by a quiet determination from those who believed in the sanctity of every life. In response, voices rose, not in anger, but in a calm assertion of the values that had given life to the refuge. A meeting was arranged in a community center bathed in the soft light of late afternoon. There, representatives from various facets of the neighborhood gathered to discuss the delicate balance between adherence to the law and the need for humane compassion. Drusilla Moreau, a kind-hearted woman with an unwavering belief in the power of empathy, spoke gently yet firmly. Every creature that walks this earth carries a spark of life. The sanctuary is not a disruption, but a gentle reminder that compassion must be allowed to flourish, even in the face of strict regulations. Her words resonated deeply with many present, slowly softening even the hardened views of those initially opposed. As the debate unfolded, it became clear that the true challenge lay not only in the physical maintenance of the refuge, but in the transformation of hearts and minds. In hushed yet hopeful discussions, neighbors began to envision a future where humane laws might evolve to protect both human and animal life, a future where the rigid barriers between civilization and the wild could be gently dismantled by understanding and goodwill. Amid this evolving drama, new characters emerged to enrich the tapestry of life in Belladonna Heights. One such figure was Ophelia D'Argent, a mysterious traveler with eyes that shone like distant stars. Arriving in the neighborhood with the grace of one accustomed to long journeys, Ophelia carried with her a wealth of experience from far-off lands. Born in the sun-scorched deserts of Caledonia, she had witnessed firsthand the struggle for survival and the transformative power of compassion. Her presence lent an air of quiet authority to the community, and soon she became a trusted advisor in all matters concerning the care of the vulnerable. Ophelia's contributions were many. With gentle hands, she helped repair the fragile enclosures around the refuge, sharing ancient techniques learned during her travels. Her soothing voice recited long-forgotten chants of healing, and her knowledge of natural remedies enriched the efforts to mend the frail bodies of the cubs. Through her, the sanctuary became not only a physical refuge, but also a wellspring of ancient wisdom, a beacon guiding all toward a future where life, in all its forms, was revered. As the seasons turned and the light of summer slowly yielded to the golden hues of autumn, the community's bond with the sanctuary deepened. Under a sky streaked with the blush of evening, Quiet gatherings were held in the garden beneath an ancient willow whose drooping branches seemed to whisper secrets of resilience. Lanterns, carefully strung among the tree limbs, cast a warm glow on faces filled with hope. Here, stories were shared, not of personal triumphs, but of the quiet, miracles born from collective care. Tales of how a stray family had transformed from a symbol of neglect to a living testament of life's enduring spirit wove through the evening air. In these gatherings, voices of various ages and backgrounds united in a singular purpose: to honor the resilience of every creature and to reaffirm that the delicate thread of compassion could bind even the most disparate souls. Children listened with wide eyes as elders recounted how kindness had changed lives, and even the once skeptical Inspector Giusti was seen among the crowd, his stern features softened by the undeniable evidence of human empathy in action. Yet, amid the gentle rhythms of community life, challenges from the outer world began to encroach upon the fragile sanctuary. Rumors spread of a clandestine network that sought to exploit stray animals for profit, a shadowy undercurrent threatening to undo the delicate work that had been painstakingly accomplished. Whispers of smugglers and profiteers began to circulate, carried on the winds of discontent and greed. The threat was silent but ominous, a dark reminder that even the most carefully nurtured havens could be vulnerable to the machinations of those driven solely by avarice. One particularly stormy evening, when lightning split the sky and the relentless patter of rain blurred the boundaries between night and day, the sanctuary was put to its most severe test yet. As the tempest raged outside, fierce winds battered the makeshift structures, and parts of the carefully built enclosure crumbled under nature's wrath. In the midst of the chaos, Marcellina, ever the devoted guardian, rallied her cubs with a determination that defied the fury of the storm. Under the dim glow of emergency lanterns, the community mobilized with unwavering resolve. Neighbors, once strangers bound only by proximity, now became guardians of a fragile dream. They labored side by side, mending broken fences, patching shattered shelters, and whispering reassurances into the howling wind. In the days following the storm, as the skies cleared and the first hints of a new dawn broke through the lingering clouds, the scars of the night served as both a physical reminder of nature's might and a metaphor for the challenges that lay ahead. The community gathered once more beneath the ancient willow to survey the damage and to reaffirm their commitment to the sanctuary. In solemn yet hopeful tones, plans were laid to reinforce the refuge, ensuring that every creature sheltered within its bounds would continue to find safety and love. It was during this period of renewal that a new figure emerged from the shadows: Octavian Lamberti, a man whose quiet presence carried the weight of unspoken sorrows and distant memories. With a tailored coat and eyes that betrayed both wisdom and lingering melancholy, Octavian appeared at the edge of the garden one cool evening. His voice, calm and resonant, spoke of journeys across forgotten lands, of ancient cities where stray animals had once been celebrated as symbols of resilience rather than exploited for profit. His tale was one of exile and hope, a narrative that resonated deeply with the ongoing struggle to protect the vulnerable. In the days that followed, Octavian's insights became instrumental in guiding the community's efforts. With meticulous care, plans were drawn to expand the sanctuary's reach beyond the boundaries of Belladonna Heights. Collaborative workshops were organized with neighboring towns, where experts in urban wildlife management and compassionate care shared techniques to nurture life even in the harshest environments. These initiatives transformed the small refuge into a beacon for all who believed that empathy was a force capable of mending even the deepest wounds. At the same time, news began to filter in of a dark underbelly lurking on the fringes of society, a syndicate dedicated to trafficking stray animals for profit. The whispers of this nefarious network set hearts racing and united the community in a common cause. Vigilance increased, and patrols were organized along the perimeter of the sanctuary. Under the cover of darkness, groups gathered to document suspicious activities, determined to expose the cruelty that threatened to shatter the delicate bonds of trust. Even those who had once doubted the feasibility of such vigilance now stood shoulder to shoulder with unwavering conviction. As autumn deepened and the air turned crisp with the promise of winter, the sanctuary entered a new phase, a period marked by both introspection and resolute action. With every fallen leaf that drifted onto the path leading to the Refuge of Hope, there echoed the silent vow of every heart present, that no creature, no matter how small or fragile, would be left to suffer alone. In hushed corridors of community halls and around long wooden tables illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight, plans were made not just to protect the sanctuary, but to create lasting changes in the local laws, a transformation that would enshrine compassion as a cornerstone of governance. Workshops evolved into monthly gatherings, where residents shared their experiences and discussed ways to forge alliances with local authorities. Fiorella Mancini's herbal remedies became a subject of study, and her gentle demonstrations on the healing properties of natural herbs captivated audiences eager to learn the ancient lore of care. Ophelia d'Argent, with her storied past and deep well of knowledge, began mentoring younger volunteers, instilling in them the belief that every life was sacred and every act of kindness could ripple outward, transforming the world. The narrative of the sanctuary reached further still when a letter arrived from a distant city, a heartfelt message from a renowned animal welfare organization that had caught wind of the miraculous transformation in Belladonna Heights. The letter, penned in a careful hand and bearing the seal of an ancient benefactor, spoke of plans to visit and document the story, to help inspire similar havens in other corners of the nation. The promise of recognition only further galvanized the community, reaffirming that the path chosen was one of both struggle and boundless hope. Even as the external threats grew more pressing, the internal bonds of the sanctuary's community only strengthened. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the world was hushed and every breath felt sacred, the gentle sounds of pause and whispered reassurances filled the air. Marcellina would watch over her cubs with a fierce maternal instinct, her eyes reflecting both the hardship of her past and the promise of a better future. The cubs, in their playful wanderings and cautious explorations, became living symbols of resilience, each small leap a defiant challenge to the cruelty of fate. Under the ever-watchful gaze of neighbors and volunteers alike, every member of the community played their part in the ongoing saga of the Refuge of Hope. Regular patrols along the rebuilt fence ensured that no shadowy figure would disrupt the harmony that had been so painstakingly established. Meetings with local officials, once tense and fraught with disagreement, began to yield small victories as policies were slowly reshaped to recognize the importance of compassion in public spaces. With winter approaching, preparations were made to fortify the sanctuary against the harsh chill. Blankets were woven with care, and heated shelters were constructed to provide warmth during the longest nights. Even as nature's challenges loomed large, the shared determination of the community transformed each obstacle into an opportunity to demonstrate that, when united, kindness could overcome even the most relentless of adversities. As the narrative continued to unfold in this quiet suburb, the story of the stray family and their haven served as a beacon, a living parable of hope and transformation that transcended the boundaries of species, law, and circumstance. Every act of care, every shared meal, and every quiet conversation beneath the ancient willow deepened the conviction that a future built on empathy was not only possible, but inevitable. The unfolding chapters promised further challenges. Deeper investigations into the dark syndicate preying on stray animals, more heartfelt alliances forged with local leaders, and the gradual evolution of a society that recognized the inherent value of every life. And in the midst of these unfolding events, the silent promise of the Refuge of Hope endured, a promise that compassion, like a soft ember in the darkness, could ignite a revolution of kindness that would transform hearts and reshape communities far beyond the boundaries of Belladonna Heights. The days that followed the storm and the tense encounter with Inspector Giusti saw the community of Belladonna Heights enter a period of heightened vigilance and determination. The once quiet neighborhood, now united under the banner of compassion, found itself facing a dual challenge: to protect the sanctuary of the Refuge of Hope from external exploitation, and to unmask the sinister network that had begun to prey upon the vulnerable stray animals. Under the dappled light of an overcast morning, the garden that had once served as a haven for Marcellina and her cubs now buzzed with the quiet hum of activity. Neighbors moved with purpose, repairing the fence with renewed resolve while carefully reinforcing every vulnerable corner of the sanctuary. The sound of hammers on wood blended with hushed exchanges and determined footsteps, each gesture a testament to the strength of a community bound by empathy. In the midst of this communal effort, the specter of the clandestine network loomed larger. Rumors of profiteers trafficking stray animals had grown into an undercurrent of dread, a threat that undermined the very ideals upon which the sanctuary had been built. The whispers spoke of a syndicate that operated in the shadows. Driven solely by greed and cruelty, these rumors had reached the ears of the community's most trusted members, and together they resolved to gather evidence and expose the network before it could inflict further harm. One cool evening, as twilight draped the garden in long, somber shadows, a discreet meeting was held beneath the ancient willow. Attending were Octavian Lamberti, whose quiet insights had become indispensable; Ophelia d'Argent, the mysterious traveler whose wisdom seemed to bridge distant worlds; Drusilla; Moreau, whose gentle conviction had already swayed hardened hearts; Fiorella Mancini, the elderly herbalist with a deep connection to nature's remedies; and several other dedicated neighbors. In a hushed tone, the group outlined a plan to document suspicious activities and establish a covert network of vigilance that could protect not only the Refuge of Hope, but also the stray animals roaming beyond the borders of Belladonna Heights. The plan was as intricate as it was necessary. Each member of the group was assigned a role. Some were to patrol the perimeters of the sanctuary at night, while others were tasked with discreetly observing areas known to be frequented by those rumored to be part of the syndicate. Octavian, with his steady demeanor and piercing insight, took charge of coordinating the effort, urging caution while emphasizing that every piece of evidence could prove crucial in halting the profiteers' schemes. On a particularly foggy night when the moon was shrouded behind a veil of mist, a group of vigilant community members set out on their assigned patrol. The air was cool and thick with anticipation as the silent observers moved along the narrow paths behind the garden. Their senses were sharpened by the knowledge that danger lurked in the dark. In the distance, subtle sounds, a soft rustling of leaves, the distant hum of a vehicle engine, stirred a sense of foreboding. Every detail was meticulously noted in discreet notebooks, the scribbled words capturing the rhythm of hidden activity. It was during one of these nocturnal patrols that a crucial development unfolded. Along a rarely used side road bordering the sanctuary, a lone figure was observed moving with a stealth that betrayed intent. The observer, a reserved yet determined local named Bianca Falconi, reported seeing a dark-cloaked individual tampering with a loose panel in a dilapidated structure that once served as an outbuilding on the edge of the property. The figure's actions were deliberate, and the observer noted the unmistakable glint of tools in the person's hand. Bianca's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and resolve as she documented every detail before returning to the safe glow of the community center. The next day, the evidence gathered during the patrol was presented at a discreet meeting. Octavian's eyes narrowed as he listened to Bianca's account, his voice low and measured as he spoke of the implications. "This is no ordinary trespass," he said, his tone grave. "The precision of these actions, the care with which the intruder operates, it is clear that our enemy is organized and methodical. We must act swiftly and ensure that every stray, every vulnerable creature is shielded from exploitation." In response to these revelations, the community launched a dual initiative. First, they bolstered the physical defenses of the sanctuary. Under the guidance of Ophelia and Fiorella, a series of improvements was implemented. Reclaimed wood was carefully fashioned into additional barriers, and natural deterrents, mixtures of herbal extracts and pungent oils known to repel intruders, were discreetly applied around the perimeter. Each modification was executed with both care and artistry, ensuring that the sanctuary remained a place of gentle refuge while becoming increasingly secure against those with malicious intent. Second, the community decided to forge alliances with sympathetic local authorities. Despite earlier tensions, the growing body of evidence and the unmistakable unity of Belladonna Heights had begun to soften even the most rigid minds. Drusilla; Moreau led a delegation to meet with municipal representatives, presenting the documented accounts of suspicious activity alongside testimonies from community members. Her voice, firm yet compassionate, conveyed the urgency of protecting a community that had become a beacon of hope amid a landscape too often dominated by cruelty and neglect. In the austere meeting room of the local council, the delegates argued passionately that the law must be adapted to safeguard not only property, but the sanctity of every life, human or animal. As these efforts unfolded, the narrative of the Refuge of Hope took on a deeper dimension. The sanctuary was no longer merely a physical haven. It had become a symbol of resistance against an indifferent system, a rallying point for those who believed that empathy must prevail over exploitation. The stray family at its heart, Marcellina with her resilient gaze and her cubs, Isadora, Lucian and Serafina, now growing stronger with each passing day, became emblems of survival and transformation. Their daily progress was watched with reverence by a community that had learned to find beauty in the quiet triumphs of nature. One crisp morning, as the golden hues of sunrise dispelled the remnants of night, the sanctuary was awakened by a series of soft, measured barks. The sound heralded the arrival of a new group of stray animals, a small assembly of dogs, and even a pair of timid cats that had been drawn to the warmth and promise of the Refuge of Hope. Word had spread beyond Belladonna Heights, carried by those whose hearts beat in tune with the call of compassion. The arrival of these new souls was met with a mixture of joy and concern. While their presence affirmed that the sanctuary's influence was growing, it also underscored the responsibility to care for an ever-expanding community. The integration of these newcomers required adjustments. Volunteers from the community, under the careful supervision of Fiorella and Ophelia, worked to expand the existing refuge. New enclosures were built with the same careful craftsmanship, blending seamlessly into the natural landscape. The scent of rosemary and chamomile mingled with the earthy aroma of freshly cut wood, creating an atmosphere that was both nurturing and invigorating. In these moments, the sanctuary became a living tapestry of hope, its threads interwoven with the stories of countless lives reborn through kindness. Yet the threat from the clandestine network continued to cast a long shadow. As evidence mounted and the coordinated patrols gathered detailed accounts of covert activities, it became clear that the syndicate was not content to remain in the background. Their operatives grew bolder, and several encounters hinted at a deliberate campaign to undermine the sanctuary's progress. In one particularly chilling incident, a patrol team reported the sighting of a pair of figures exchanging small packages near a derelict warehouse at the outskirts of Belladonna Heights. The packages, concealed beneath worn cloth, were presumed to contain items that facilitated the illicit trade in stray animals. The community's response to these emerging threats was swift and resolute. Under the careful guidance of Octavian, who had spent long hours poring over historical records and local legends, a plan was devised to intercept and document the activities of the syndicate. The operation, codenamed Aurora, was designed to be covert, relying on the quiet ingenuity of the volunteers and the strategic positioning of lookout posts throughout the neighborhood. Every detail was planned meticulously. Discreet cameras were set up in concealed positions, and communication channels were established among the patrol teams to relay real-time observations. The objective was clear: to collect irrefutable evidence that could expose the network and force the hand of the authorities. During one tense evening operation, the team gathered near the derelict warehouse. The air was thick with anticipation as they positioned themselves among the shadows, eyes scanning the darkened building for any sign of movement. Hours passed in near silence, punctuated only by the distant hum of a city that remained oblivious to the clandestine battle unfolding in its midst. Then, as the clock neared midnight, a pair of figures emerged from the warehouse. Their actions were deliberate, exchanging a small, sealed parcel before disappearing into the labyrinth of narrow alleys. Every movement was recorded by the hidden cameras, and a wave of quiet triumph swept through the patrol as they confirmed their suspicions. With the evidence in hand, the community prepared for the next phase of their campaign. Drusilla and Octavian, along with several other respected members, organized a public forum at the local community center. The forum was designed not only to present the gathered evidence, but also to spark a broader conversation about the need for legislative change in the treatment of stray animals and vulnerable lives. Under the warm glow of hanging lanterns and amidst an attentive audience, the delegates recounted the series of covert operations the documented encounters, and the silent resilience of the community in the face of exploitation. Their words resonated with an urgency born of lived experience, urging municipal leaders to take decisive action against those who sought to profit from the suffering of the defenseless. The forum stirred a cautious optimism among local officials. A committee was formed to review existing regulations, and discussions were initiated on how best to integrate the lessons learned from the Refuge of Hope into a framework that recognized the inherent value of every living creature. In parallel, community leaders, bolstered by the tangible evidence of the syndicate's operations, forged alliances with regional law enforcement. Though progress was measured and fraught with bureaucratic obstacles, the combined efforts of compassionate citizens and determined officials gradually began to shift the balance. Throughout these turbulent times, the sanctuary itself continued to evolve as a dynamic center of life and learning. Under the nurturing guidance of Ophelia, workshops were organized on sustainable living and natural healing practices. Fiorella's herbal remedies became not only a means to heal the stray animals but also a bridge connecting modern science with ancient traditions. The sessions, held in the open-air pavilion of the sanctuary, attracted visitors from neighboring towns, scholars, activists, and even curious youths, each drawn by the magnetic promise of a community that dared to reimagine the boundaries between human and animal compassion. As autumn yielded to the gentle embrace of winter, the sanctuary faced its own seasonal trials. Bitter winds swept through Belladonna Heights, and the once vibrant garden was blanketed in a quiet, reflective silence. In response, the community rallied to prepare for the long months ahead. Heated shelters were constructed, and every available resource was marshaled to ensure that every creature, from the smallest cub to the newest stray, was sheltered from the cold. The scent of hot broth and the soft murmur of communal songs filled the air during evening gatherings, as neighbors shared stories of resilience and the shared hope that had brought them together. In the midst of winter's harsh embrace, an unexpected development further complicated the struggle against the Dark Syndicate. A young man, whose appearance had been recorded during one of the nocturnal patrols, reappeared under dramatically different circumstances. His name was Dimitri Solano, a figure whose sorrowful eyes and trembling voice spoke of coercion and regret. Unlike the stealthy operatives observed earlier, Dimitri appeared conflicted and vulnerable, as though burdened by a past that he wished to escape. His confession, delivered in a hushed tone during a clandestine meeting arranged by the Vigilant Patrol, revealed that he had been forced into the network's service by threats against his own family. In a moment of fragile honesty, Dimitri recounted the relentless pressure exerted by the syndicate, the fear that had driven him to commit unspeakable acts, and his desperate hope for redemption. The revelation of Dimitri's plight sparked a fervent debate within the community. Many argued that his testimony was a vital clue, a crack in the armor of the syndicate that could be exploited to dismantle its operations. Others, however, cautioned that trusting him too quickly might expose the sanctuary to further danger. The matter was discussed at length during a series of closed meetings, where voices rose in measured tones, weighed by the gravity of the decision at hand. In the end, it was decided that Dimitri's cooperation would be conditional. He was to work with the community's covert task force under strict supervision, providing further evidence of the syndicate's inner workings in exchange for protection and a chance at a new beginning. As the community integrated Dimitri into their operations, new layers of complexity emerged. His insider knowledge, though valuable, came at the cost of an unspoken tension that lingered in every whispered conversation. Nevertheless, his contributions began to yield results. Detailed maps of the syndicate's operations were drawn, and several previously unknown contacts were identified. Each discovery served as a reminder that even within the darkest corridors of exploitation, there existed a fragile spark of remorse and the possibility of transformation. Over the ensuing weeks, the community's efforts coalesced into a coordinated campaign that extended far beyond the confines of Belladonna Heights. Regional news outlets, initially skeptical of the sanctuary's unconventional nature, began to report on the remarkable story unfolding in the quiet suburb. The narrative, once confined to hushed whispers and local meetings, spread like wildfire. Testament to the transformative power of compassion and collective action, public opinion galvanized by the vivid accounts of the stray family's survival and the courageous resistance against exploitation, put increasing pressure on law enforcement and municipal leaders to act decisively. Under mounting public scrutiny, the regional authorities launched a formal investigation into the syndicate's operations. Joint task forces, comprised of law enforcement officers, animal welfare experts, and representatives from the compassionate community, were assembled to probe the depths of the criminal network. The investigation was a slow, methodical process, marked by numerous challenges and moments of profound uncertainty. Yet each new piece of evidence, the detailed surveillance footage, the testimonies of intimidated insiders, the painstaking records kept by the community patrols, added momentum to the pursuit of justice. Even as the wheels of bureaucracy turned, the sanctuary remained a vibrant nucleus of hope. The stray animals, now numbering far beyond the original family, found solace and nourishment in the warm embrace of the Refuge of Hope. Each new arrival was welcomed as a living testament to the sanctuary's mission, and every act of kindness, whether a shared meal or a gentle caress, deepened the unspoken bonds among those who gathered there. The collective spirit of the community shone brightest during the long winter nights, when the light of compassion defied the encroaching darkness. In the midst of these turbulent events, the narrative of Belladonna Heights took on a mythic quality. The sanctuary, once a modest refuge for a stray family, had become a beacon of transformative power, a living parable of how empathy and courage could rewrite the fate of those who had been forgotten by a callous world. Each challenge met, each obstacle overcome, became part of an enduring legacy that would inspire future generations to believe in the quiet revolution of kindness. As spring approached and the first tender buds emerged from the thawing earth, the investigation into the syndicate neared a critical juncture. The collaborative task force, buoyed by the unwavering resolve of the community and the painstaking evidence amassed over months, was preparing for a decisive operation aimed at dismantling the criminal network once and for all. In carefully orchestrated raids conducted in the early hours of a misty morning, law enforcement officers moved with silent precision, guided by the intelligence gathered by the vigilant community. The operations, conducted on multiple fronts, marked the culmination of a long struggle, a moment when the darkness of exploitation would finally be met by the resolute light of justice. In the aftermath of the raids, as news of the syndicate's partial dismantling began to circulate, the sanctuary of the Refuge of Hope stood as a monument not only to the survival of stray animals, but also to the transformative power of collective action. The legal proceedings that followed, though complex and drawn out, served as a powerful reminder that even the most entrenched systems of cruelty could be challenged when a community united in compassion refused to yield. Public support for the sanctuary surged, and policies were gradually reformed to recognize the rights and dignity of all living creatures. The unfolding saga in Belladonna Heights had reached a moment of tentative triumph, yet the journey was far from over. New challenges lay on the horizon, questions of rebuilding trust in a society marred by exploitation, of forging new alliances that would ensure the lasting protection of vulnerable lives, and of continually reaffirming that every act of kindness, no matter how small, could ripple outward to create profound change. As the gentle spring sun cast its warm glow over the rejuvenated gardens of the sanctuary, the residents of Belladonna Heights gathered once again beneath the ancient willow for a celebration of renewal. In the soft hum of laughter, music, and whispered promises, the community reaffirmed its commitment to the principles that had sustained them through hardship and conflict. The stray family that had sparked this remarkable journey, Marcellina, with her fierce maternal spirit, and her cubs, Isadora, Lucienne, and Serafina, whose eyes shone with the promise of new beginnings, continued to thrive as living symbols of resilience and hope. In the weeks that followed, the sanctuary expanded its reach further into the region. Educational programs were launched, inviting people from neighboring towns to witness firsthand the transformative power of compassion. Workshops on sustainable care, the integration of traditional herbal remedies, and the art of community building drew participants from diverse backgrounds, all united by a shared belief in the sanctity of life. The story of the Refuge of Hope was chronicled in local journals and celebrated in community events, serving as a beacon to all those who dared to imagine a world where kindness reigned supreme. As dusk fell on yet another day of hard-won progress, the garden of Belladonna Heights shimmered with the quiet glow of hope. Lanterns hung in the boughs of the ancient willow, and gentle voices recited verses of gratitude and perseverance. The struggle against exploitation had not ended, but in that moment, it was clear that the enduring spirit of the community, fueled by compassion, guided by wisdom, and bound by an unwavering commitment to protect every living soul, had ignited a revolution of kindness that would continue to illuminate the darkest of nights. Thus, the narrative of the sanctuary continued to evolve, a living, breathing testament to the power of empathy in a world too often divided by indifference. Every challenge met, every victory secured became a page in the enduring chronicle of Belladonna Heights, a chronicle that whispered in quiet tones and resolute hearts that even the most fragile life could transform into a radiant symbol of hope and redemption. In the wake of the sweeping reforms and courageous interventions that had begun to reshape Belladonna Heights, the sanctuary known as the Refuge of Hope entered a new phase of both promise and peril. The community's collective triumph over exploitation had sent ripples of hope through the region, yet the deeper shadows of the old syndicate and new, unforeseen adversaries remained ever present, waiting for a moment to exploit any lapse in vigilance. As the days grew longer with the approach of summer, the garden transformed once again. Vibrant bursts of color emerged among carefully tended flower beds, and the sounds of children playing and stray animals frolicking filled the air with an almost celebratory melody. The sanctuary, having expanded its protective embrace, now housed not only the original stray family of Marcellina and her cubs, Isadora, Lucian, and Serafina, but also scores of other rescued creatures whose stories had merged with that of the Refuge of Hope. Among these were elderly canines with wise, sorrowful eyes and young sprightly ones whose exuberance painted an image of rebirth. Central to this transformation was a newly established advisory council composed of compassionate local citizens, animal welfare experts, and even reformed former operatives from the dark network. One of the council's most dedicated members was Serafina Rinaldi, a soft-spoken yet resolute advocate with origins in a distant Mediterranean coastal town. Her tireless efforts in documenting the plight of stray animals and lobbying for humane policies had earned her the admiration of many. With a pen in hand and a heart full of determination, she led community outreach programs aimed at educating both young and old about the intrinsic value of every life. Under Serafina's leadership, workshops were organized in the community center adjacent to the sanctuary. These gatherings focused on topics ranging from sustainable animal care and traditional herbal medicine to conflict resolution and civic engagement. Every session was held in an open-air pavilion, its whitewashed walls and arching columns adorned with creeping vines and clusters of wildflowers. The gentle hum of conversation, intermingled with occasional laughter and the soft strumming of a guitar, created an atmosphere where learning was both a communal celebration and a quiet act of resistance against indifference. As word of these transformative efforts spread beyond the confines of Belladonna Heights, delegations from neighboring towns arrived, eager to witness firsthand the miracle that was unfolding. Delegates bearing names such as Luciana Moretti and Matteo Vincenzi, figures renowned in their own communities for championing social reforms, marveled at the meticulous care with which every stray and every volunteer was nurtured. They listened intently as Serafina and other council members recounted the arduous journey from despair to hope, recounting episodes of desperate nights, clandestine patrols, and the eventual triumph over a system that had once seemed implacable. But even as the community celebrated these successes, a quiet undercurrent of uncertainty pulsed through the corridors of power. The syndicate's remnants, though battered by recent raids and legal actions, had not been completely eradicated. Instead, they had withdrawn into the hidden recesses of the urban labyrinth, biding their time and regrouping for what many feared would be a resurgence of their illicit activities. Intelligence reports hinted at new alliances being forged between former profiteers and shadowy figures emerging from distant industrial quarters, a network that had learned to adapt, blending into the chaos of modern urban life. One particularly, sweltering afternoon when the heat seemed to distort the very air above the garden. A sense of foreboding began to settle among the community's most experienced guardians. A discreet tip had been received by the newly formed Vigilance Task Force, led by none other than Octavian Lamberti. Known for his unerring intuition and an encyclopedic knowledge of the city's hidden histories, Octavian had become the de facto coordinator of operations designed to keep the sanctuary and its surrounding neighborhoods safe. His meticulous records and strategic insights had already prevented several potential breaches, and now a new lead demanded his attention. Under the cover of a hazy, languid twilight, Octavian convened a meeting in a quiet corner of the community center. Attendees included longtime volunteers, such as Drusilla Moreau and Fiorella Mancini, as well as representatives of newly formed alliances like Serafina Rinaldi and the reformed Dimitri Solano. Dimitri, whose earlier confession had opened a window into the syndicate's workings, now served as a bridge between the two worlds. His eyes, once clouded by regret, now shone with a cautious determination to redeem his past misdeeds. In hushed tones, the group discussed recent sightings near the industrial outskirts of the city. A rundown warehouse district where flickering neon signs and the rustle of empty containers provided a fitting backdrop for clandestine meetings. According to Dimitri's latest intelligence, an emissary of the old network had been spotted exchanging discreet parcels with a group of hooded figures near a decrepit cargo terminal. The packages, described as inconspicuously wrapped bundles containing what appeared to be tracking devices and coded documents, were believed to be part of a new scheme designed to monitor and control stray animal populations for nefarious profit. With each piece of information, the tension in the room thickened like the humidity on a summer night. Octavian's calm, measured voice cut through the uncertainty. "We must intercept these transactions and gather undeniable evidence. This is our chance to strike at the heart of the remaining network and ensure that no more lives are exploited." Plans were quickly set in motion. The task force would split into several small teams, each assigned to surveil different sections of the industrial district. With concealed cameras and discreet communication devices, the teams moved under the veil of darkness. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, every rustle in the shadows drawing heightened alertness. For hours, the teams maintained their vigil, waiting for the precise moment when the emissary would appear. As the night deepened, a thin drizzle began to fall, softening the harsh glow of the streetlights and lending an almost ethereal quality to the scene. Near a long-abandoned freight depot, a lone figure emerged from behind a stack of corrugated metal boxes. Dressed in a dark overcoat and a cap pulled low over his eyes, the emissary moved with a deliberate grace that betrayed a familiarity with the terrain. He approached a weathered door, his steps measured and his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond. Moments later, a second figure appeared, and an exchange took place that was both swift and silent. A brief handshake, a nod, and the passing of a small, inconspicuous package from one hand to the other. Hidden cameras captured every moment with a clarity that would later prove crucial. The task force, though tense and vigilant, allowed themselves a brief exhale as the figures melted back into the night. In the following hours, the collected footage and recorded testimonies were meticulously analyzed. Every detail, from the cadence of whispered voices to the glint of a particular tool, was scrutinized and cross-referenced with earlier intelligence reports. The evidence was mounting, a damning case that could force the hand of law enforcement to take more decisive action against the network. At dawn, as the first light of a new day struggled to pierce the lingering shadows, a press release was issued, jointly by the Regional Task Force and the compassionate community of Belladonna Heights. The statement, written in measured yet impassioned tones, detailed the relentless efforts to protect vulnerable lives and dismantle the remnants of exploitation. It spoke not only of the surveillance and evidence-gathering operations, but also of the community's broader vision, a future where every stray animal and every neglected life could find sanctuary under the protective umbrella of empathy and reform. The press release ignited a flurry of activity. Local newspapers ran extensive features on the investigation, and television news channels aired segments that celebrated the unyielding spirit of the community. Public opinion, once divided on the merits of unconventional sanctuaries, now overwhelmingly rallied behind the cause. Bills were introduced in the municipal council to further reform animal welfare laws, ensuring that the lessons learned from the Refuge of Hope would be enshrined in legislation. This legislative momentum, nurtured by countless petitions and public demonstrations, began to reshape not only local policy, but also the broader cultural understanding of compassion as a civic duty. Amid these developments, the sanctuary itself continued to serve as a living laboratory of humane innovation. The educational programs expanded, drawing guest speakers from across the region. One such speaker was Marcello Di Stefano, an internationally renowned veterinarian with a passion for alternative healing methods. Marcello arrived in Belladonna Heights amid great fanfare, his reputation preceding him as a maverick who had dedicated his life to merging modern science with time-honored practices. In a series of public seminars held in the open-air amphitheater of the sanctuary, he demonstrated cutting-edge techniques for treating common ailments in stray animals, techniques that incorporated both modern medical equipment and traditional herbal remedies. His lectures, interspersed with practical demonstrations on healing and care, captivated an audience that ranged from curious local residents to seasoned animal welfare advocates. The success of these initiatives spurred further collaboration. A coalition of local artists, inspired by the evolving narrative of the sanctuary, embarked on a project to create a series of murals depicting the journey from desolation to hope. In a burst of creative energy, the artists transformed a once-neglected wall on a nearby community center into a vibrant tableau, a mosaic of colors and symbols that celebrated the enduring resilience of life. The mural, titled Resurgence, featured images of wild animals, blooming flora, and abstract representations of unity and renewal. Its unveiling became a local event, drawing crowds that marveled at the powerful fusion of art and activism. In hushed reverence, many noted that the mural captured not only the story of the Refuge of Hope, but also the collective heartbeat of a community determined to turn compassion into action. Yet, even as the sanctuary flourished under the light of reform and public support, the specter of danger persisted. The remnants of the criminal network, though weakened and forced into the shadows, were not entirely vanquished. Sporadic incidents continued to punctuate the otherwise hopeful narrative. A broken window here, a subtle act of vandalism there, each serving as a reminder that vigilance was the price of lasting change. In response, the task force intensified its efforts. With Dimitri Solano now working under close supervision as an insider, new operations were planned to infiltrate deeper layers of the network. His insights, combined with the strategic acumen of Octavian Lamberti and the unwavering determination of the community's volunteers, led to the conception of a daring plan to not only gather further evidence, but also to lure out the elusive ringleaders. On a humid evening, when the air itself seemed to quiver with anticipation, a covert operation was launched in the industrial quarter. A select team, cloaked in darkness and armed with discreet recording devices, was dispatched to an abandoned factory complex reputed to be a secondary hub for the syndicate's activities. The complex, with its rusted machinery and cavernous halls, provided an ominous backdrop for the unfolding operation. Every step was measured and every sound analyzed. The team advanced with the caution of those who knew that a single misstep could tip the delicate balance between success and peril. Deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the factory, the team discovered evidence that corroborated earlier suspicions. Hidden behind a false wall, documents were found. Detailed ledgers recording transactions, coded messages that alluded to further shipments, and photographs linking influential figures to the exploitation of stray animals. The discovery was a turning point, a tangible link that could potentially unravel the entire network. With the evidence secured, the team retreated as silently as they had arrived, leaving behind a trail of documentation that would soon become the linchpin of a major legal crackdown. The impact of this operation rippled through the region. News of the factory raid and the subsequent discoveries ignited public outrage against those who had sought to profit from the suffering of innocent creatures. Protests erupted in nearby towns where citizens marched with banners and heartfelt slogans demanding justice for all living beings. Petitions flooded the offices of regional lawmakers, and the coalition of compassionate citizens grew ever larger. In the midst of this fervor, local authorities, bolstered by the undeniable evidence and the unwavering support of the people, initiated a series of high-profile arrests. The dismantling of the syndicate, while not yet complete, had become a tangible reality, and every arrest was celebrated as a victory for humanity and for the sanctity of life. As the legal process unfolded, the focus at the Refuge of Hope shifted, once again to healing and rebuilding. The sanctuary, ever a symbol of hope, adapted to its new role as a hub for community-driven innovation in animal welfare. Under the guidance of experts like Marcello Di Stefano and the ever-resourceful Ophelia d'Argent, new treatment protocols were developed that combined state-of-the-art veterinary care with the gentle wisdom of traditional medicine. Workshops and training sessions were held not only for the shelter's staff, but also for volunteers from far and wide. These sessions emphasized the importance of empathy, patience, and the recognition that healing, whether of a wounded animal or a fractured community, required a delicate balance between science and art. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, the legislative battle continued. A newly formed committee, comprising members of the compassionate community and sympathetic officials, worked tirelessly to draft amendments that would enshrine animal welfare as an inalienable right. Their efforts culminated in a groundbreaking bill, hailed by advocates as a turning point in regional governance. The bill, which promised stricter penalties for exploitation and greater support for sanctuaries and rescue operations, passed amid a wave of public enthusiasm and hopeful anticipation. It was a moment that encapsulated the spirit of Belladonna Heights, a belief that when compassion and collective action united, even the most entrenched systems of cruelty could be transformed. As summer faded into the crisp embrace of early autumn, the sanctuary and its surrounding community basked in the glow of their hard-won victories. Yet, amid the celebrations, a quiet resolve persisted, a collective understanding that the struggle for justice was an ongoing journey, one that demanded constant vigilance and unwavering commitment. Every stray animal that found solace within the protective walls of the Refuge of Hope, every act of kindness exchanged between neighbors, and every step taken toward legislative reform stood as a testament to the transformative power of empathy. In Tituine, the gentle light of an autumn afternoon as golden leaves drifted lazily to the ground, a new chapter began to unfold. A delegation from a renowned international animal welfare organization arrived, their faces a blend of determination and admiration. They came not only to document the remarkable journey of the sanctuary, but also to forge partnerships that would extend its influence far beyond the borders of Belladonna Heights. Their visit was marked by a series of collaborative workshops, media briefings, and cultural events that celebrated the sanctuary's unique blend of art, activism, and practical compassion. One such event was a grand symposium held in a repurposed barn on the outskirts of the neighborhood. Under the high arched ceiling and amidst the warm glow of chandeliers, experts from diverse fields, veterinary science, environmental conservation, community planning, and even local historians, gathered to discuss the evolving landscape of animal welfare. The symposium, titled "Embracing the Wild Within," featured passionate speeches, interactive demonstrations, and panels that challenged conventional wisdom. The attendees, many of whom had traveled from distant lands, marveled at the way a modest sanctuary had sparked a revolution of kindness that resonated on a global scale. The success of the symposium further solidified the sanctuary's role as a beacon of hope and innovation. Plans were set in motion to create a research center adjacent to the Refuge of Hope, a facility dedicated to studying the intersection of urban wildlife management, sustainable living, and community empowerment. The research center, with its state-of-the-art laboratories and serene outdoor spaces, was envisioned as a collaborative space where scholars, activists, and local volunteers could come together to share knowledge and craft new solutions to age-old challenges. Even as the community's focus expanded outward, the day-to-day life within the sanctuary continued to be filled with quiet, profound moments of grace. Each morning, as the sun's first rays touched the dew-laden grass, Marcellina could be seen gently nudging her cubs awake, their eyes reflecting the promise of another day filled with hope. In the soft murmur of the wind through the ancient willow, in the gentle rustle of leaves on a warm afternoon, and in the quiet laughter of children as they played with rescued animals, the heartbeat of the Refuge of Hope pulsed with a rhythm that was both timeless and transformative. The journey was far from over. The dismantling of the syndicate had achieved significant victories, but the path ahead remained fraught with challenges. Rumors persisted that remnants of the criminal network, scattered like embers in the dark, would one day seek to reignite their operations. New players, drawn by the promise of profit in a world still struggling with neglect and apathy, occasionally surfaced on the peripheries of the community. Each such incident was met with a calm, measured response, a reminder that the strength of the sanctuary lay not in its walls or in its policies alone, but in the unwavering spirit of a people united by compassion. And so, as the leaves of autumn turned from gold to rust and the cool whisper of winter began to stir, the sanctuary prepared for a season of introspection and renewed determination. The community gathered once more beneath the ancient willow, now adorned with garlands and soft lanterns, to honor the journey that had brought them this far. In the quiet space between spoken words and unspoken resolve, there was an understanding that every act of kindness, every meal shared, every shelter built, every law reformed, was a victory against the forces of indifference. The legacy of the Refuge of Hope was thus etched into the fabric of Belladonna Heights, a living chronicle of survival, transformation, and the indomitable power of empathy. As the sanctuary's story continued to unfold, each new chapter promised both fresh challenges and the reaffirmation that even in a world rife with cruelty, the gentle flame of compassion could illuminate the darkest of nights. In the deep embrace of winter, when the world outside Belladonna Heights lay hushed under a blanket of soft snow, and the chill of night whispered of past struggles and future promise, the sanctuary known as the Refuge of Hope stood as a living monument to every life nurtured within its gentle confines. The journey had been long and fraught with trials, an odyssey of quiet heroism against a backdrop of societal indifference and clandestine cruelty. But as the days grew longer, and winter reluctantly gave way to the soft breath of early spring, the community found itself on the cusp of a final transformative climax. The streets of Belladonna Heights had changed. Once divided by skepticism and hardened routine, they now pulsed with a vibrant collective heartbeat. The neighborhood had become a beacon of progressive change, its transformation heralded not only by the thriving sanctuary, but also by the legislation and social reforms that now protected all creatures, great and small. In every corner, from the lovingly restored community center to the newly erected research facility adjacent to the Refuge of Hope, the echoes of compassion resonated like a timeless refrain. At the center of this rebirth were the animals, the stray family that had sparked this entire movement. Marcellina, the resilient dog mother whose eyes had witnessed both despair and hope, had grown stronger with the passage of time. Her cubs, once timid and frail, now bounded across the freshly mown lawns with spirited energy. Isadora, Lucienne, and Serafina, their coats gleaming in the spring sunlight, symbolized not only survival, but the promise of renewal. They were living proof that even the most broken paths could lead to healing if only nurtured with unwavering care. Under the gentle watch of the community's guardians, the sanctuary had evolved into a self-sustaining ecosystem. The Advisory Council, led by steadfast advocates such as Serafina Rinaldi and supported by the reformed Dimitri Solano, had worked tirelessly to implement initiatives that extended far beyond mere shelter. Workshops on sustainable living, traditional, herbal medicine, and urban wildlife management flourished, drawing experts and laypersons alike. These gatherings were a celebration of interdisciplinary knowledge, a mosaic where modern science met ancient wisdom, and where art, activism, and empathy intermingled to forge a future built on understanding. On a bright spring morning, as delicate blossoms unfurled against the gentle warmth of the sun, a grand celebration was planned. The community had organized a festival known as the Festival of Rebirth to commemorate the journey of the Refuge of Hope and to honor the lives that had been transformed through shared compassion. The festival was set in the expansive garden of the sanctuary, which had been lovingly landscaped with winding paths, blooming flower beds, and art installations that narrated the story of their struggles and triumphs. Murals on nearby walls depicted abstract visions of unity and renewal, a fitting tribute to the legacy of resilience that now defined Belladonna Heights. As the festival began, people from far and wide gathered to witness the culmination of a dream that had once seemed unattainable. Delegations from international animal welfare organizations, regional environmental groups, and civic reform committees mingled with local residents, united by a common belief in the sanctity of every The air was filled with gentle music, an eclectic blend of classical strings and folk melodies that lent a magical cadence to the day. Food stalls, set up by volunteers, offered nourishing treats made from locally sourced ingredients, symbolizing the community's commitment to sustainable practices. In one corner of the garden, a small stage had been set up for the speakers and artists who had become the voice of the movement. One by one, figures who had played crucial roles in the sanctuary's evolution took to the stage. There was Luciana Moretti, whose passionate speeches on social justice had once stirred heated debates in town halls. Matteo Vincenzi, a visionary, urban planner, whose innovative designs had helped reshape public spaces to be more inclusive. And Marcello Di Stefano, the renowned veterinarian whose groundbreaking work in alternative healing had inspired countless volunteers. Each word spoken on that stage was a tribute to the transformative power of empathy, a reminder that when hearts and minds unite, even the most entrenched systems of cruelty can be overthrown. The climax of the festival came with the unveiling of a monumental sculpture crafted by a coalition of local artists. The sculpture, titled Luce d'Espoir, Light of Hope, soared high above the assembled crowd. Fashioned from reclaimed metal and stone, it depicted an abstract figure with open arms, cradling a small, radiant flame. The artwork was not merely a representation of survival, but a living promise that kindness could ignite change even in the darkest of times. As the ribbon was ceremoniously cut, a collective cheer erupted from the crowd, a sound that resonated deep within the hearts of all who had journeyed together through pain and renewal. In the days leading up to the festival, the legal battle against the remnants of the criminal syndicate had reached its denouement. Thanks to the painstaking surveillance operations and the courage of individuals like Dimitri, whose insider revelations had shattered the veil of secrecy, law enforcement agencies had successfully dismantled the last vestiges of the network. Arrests were made, and the evidence collected was presented in court, leading to a series of landmark rulings that fortified the newly reformed animal welfare laws. This judicial victory was celebrated not only as a triumph of justice, but as a symbol of how collective action, guided by empathy, could overcome even the most sinister forces. In a quiet moment during the festival, as the sun dipped toward the horizon and painted the sky in hues of gold and lavender, the community gathered around the ancient willow that had long stood as a silent witness to their struggles and successes. Under its sprawling branches, an assembly formed, a circle of faces that shone with gratitude and quiet pride. In the soft murmur of voices and the rhythmic rustling of leaves, the collective memory of the journey was invoked. Here, there was no need for individual accolades or self-references. The focus was solely on the shared legacy of love and perseverance. Venerable elder of the community, Drusilla Moreau, stepped forward to speak. Her voice, gentle and imbued with the wisdom of many winters, carried across the silent clearing. Today, she began, we celebrate more than just a sanctuary. We celebrate a transformation, a metamorphosis of a community that dared to see the beauty in every life, regardless of form or origin. We have built something that transcends walls and laws, a living, breathing testament to the power of compassion. Her words, spoken with quiet authority, resonated with every heart present, stirring memories of every small act of kindness, every moment of shared struggle. In that poignant moment, the crowd reflected on the journey from despair to rebirth. They remembered the desperate morning when Marcellina, with her weary eyes and fragile cubs, had arrived at a stranger's yard, a moment that had sparked a chain of events leading to legislative reform, community unity, and the dismantling of a shadowy syndicate. They recalled the nights of clandestine meetings, the whispered plans in hushed tones, and the silent, resolute determination that had seen them through the darkest hours. And as the final notes of Drusilla's speech faded into the twilight, a sense of completion and renewed purpose filled the air. The festival continued into the night, evolving into a celebration of art, music, and the endless capacity for hope. Under a starlit sky, bonfires were lit, and groups of residents huddled together, sharing stories of personal loss, unexpected kindness, and the belief that every ending was but a new beginning. The stray animals, once symbols of neglect, now moved freely among the people, their playful barks and gentle nuzzles a reminder of the preciousness of life. In the weeks that followed the festival, Belladonna Heights experienced a renaissance of communal spirit. The research center adjacent to the sanctuary became a hub for innovative ideas on urban wildlife management, drawing scholars and activists from across the country. Educational programs flourished, and young minds were inspired to pursue careers in animal welfare and environmental sustainability. The murals and sculptures that adorned public spaces served as daily reminders of the transformative journey, a legacy that would endure for generations. Legislative reforms, spurred by the undeniable success of the Refuge of Hope, rippled outward into the wider region. Policies protecting stray animals and promoting sustainable urban development became models for neighboring communities, sparking a movement that transcended municipal boundaries. In quiet legislative chambers and bustling town halls alike, the story of Belladonna Heights was recounted with reverence, a living parable that proved the extraordinary power of empathy when nurtured by collective will. And so, as the seasons turned and the gentle rhythms of life resumed their eternal dance, the sanctuary and the community that had nurtured it stood as a testament to the boundless resilience of hope. Every stray that found shelter, every law reformed in the name of compassion, and every life gently touched by the kindness of a neighbor was woven into the tapestry of a world transformed. The final chapter of this journey was not a conclusion, but an opening, a promise that the light of hope would forever illuminate the darkest corners of existence. In the quiet final hours of that transformative day, as the stars emerged one by one to claim the night sky, the ancient willow whispered softly in the breeze, a lullaby of remembrance and renewal. The legacy of the Refuge of Hope, born from a single act of mercy at a stranger's yard, now shone as a beacon for all who believed that in every heart lay the power to change the world. The story, though marked by pain and struggle, had blossomed into a magnificent saga of unity, proving that the tender flame of compassion, when nurtured, could spark a revolution of hope that transcended time, space, and even the boundaries of human understanding. Thus, the narrative of Belladonna Heights found its fitting conclusion, a moment where every challenge had been met, every victory celebrated, and every life, no matter how fragile, recognized as a brilliant thread in the fabric of an ever-unfolding tale of redemption and grace. The sun set on that memorable day, casting its final golden rays over a community reborn in love and driven by the unwavering belief that every ending is, indeed, the prelude to a new beginning.